Good morning, everyone. Yes, it is 11 a.m. We are excited. Yes, Team Evoke is excited for a lot of things. One of the things are that we are going to allow ourselves to be excited about us, right? We are gonna allow ourselves to be excited about where we find ourselves in our career and where we find ourselves within our season, that we had the opportunity to be introduced to self in your season. And with our relationship talk today, we're gonna focus on that walks hand in hand with you being introduced to self in your season. When you are in that relationship birthness, the emotions that are being birthed in your relationship. We set our date for today, yes, and we have allowed ourselves to set the time frames for where we want to find ourselves at in our season, to set those time frames for what we want to do in our seasons, and to therefore allow ourselves to listen to when it comes to self in your season, when it comes to focusing on the you fact of your season, when it comes to reminding yourself of that you are birthed in your season, you remind yourself that the one emotional, the one most important connection that you have to self is to allow yourself to be where you are required to be at in your season. And when you allow yourself to be, you really learn and listen to what is it that is gonna be fine with self, that is gonna be protective for self, that is gonna be non-abusive to self, but that is gonna be that nurtures, that protects, that produces that fruit, that is that every prosperity of self in your season. Remember, seasons to everyone is different. Everyone's connection and everyone's voice when a season changes or season starts are different. And such is our emotional connections. Such is that is the relationship itself. That is that foundation, that when you get familiar with your relationship partner, or when you learn how to choose a relationship partner, you allow yourself to get familiar with what is you in your season, and therefore the season in your relationship, that is you that has gotten familiar with your every season, that has gotten familiar with the partner in your life. Many people marry and divorce because such is relationships, right? Such is the emotional connection. It is the exact appearance of a season in your life. And because seasons changes, people often think that they are now ready to move on to a next relationship, because such is the journey of life itself. A season changes, a different country has a different season the next year, or the same time, and the seasons are different in every country, right? In many countries the seasons are different. And when we allow ourselves to listen to what is it that is going to be fine for you in your season, you allow yourself to be fine with where you are at in your relationship seasons, that is going to be different for you, that is going to be different for your partner. And therefore that familiarization, that birthness of the emotional connection is that response that you have, that someone else adapt to, because they learn from you, because they walk this journey of relationship with you, so they would find it easy to then be in one with you in your season, and the relationship then becomes a relationship for both parties, rather than someone else feeling in a relationship and someone else not being in a relationship, or not emotionally feeling that is the relationship itself. And that is what I want us to focus on today, with today's discussion, the emotions that are being birthed, right? And when we allow ourselves to focus on the emotions in the relationship, that are being birthed, we remind ourselves that birthness is color itself, right? And birthness is what we have mentioned now, the seasons itself, right? And seasons are that is invisible to realize that it comes forth, but it's there. We wake up and we see, we have planned for the season to be there today, but it just happens and it's just there, right? And it changes every year, and we are being educated to sometimes take note of how seasons changes around us, right? And that education is important in life because much of what we do, much of our human reaction is that same atmosphere, that same attitude, that same educative presence that is you in that every season. I always say in the work business that we walk seasons, that we walk with seasons, right? And therefore, everything that we apply in our daily lives, we apply that of reminding ourselves it's gonna be a season that you are gonna go through. It's gonna be a season. A season is that you experience, that you get familiar with, that you sometimes try and educate yourself about it, but that it's sometimes it's there. You need to sense it within yourself. You need to familiarize yourself with it, and you need to find yourself fine in that protective environment that is the season itself. Many countries, yes, America had a storm again, yes, we really hope that they would really learn to prepare, yes, for when that was a tornado, yes. I can't remember, but what we have to do is, I always say, last year this time something happened, right? You go back to what happened last year this time, and you always, our generation, have to educate ourselves, to always prepare ourselves a year in advance, right? So that when it happens, when it's that date, then certain people know to be a bit attentive of what is happening around themselves. That has always been, the education is always there, the newsrooms are there, the television are there, and they're really, really thoroughly always educating us of our environmental changes and how to get familiar with that education in the environment. And therefore, with our seasons, we remind ourselves that I've just mentioned the color that you add to nurture your relationship is the emotional birthness, is the season itself. The season, when we look at a different season, it comes forth in different colors, right? And we're excited about all the colors because season speaks to us in those amazingnesses that is called the color of it. And when we allow ourselves to get familiar with the color of your season, you would know, okay, my season today feels a bit blonde because I've become a bit familiar with that. My season today feels a bit blossoming because I've gotten familiar with that feeling. So that familiarization that is that nurturing color that you add to nurture your relationship. It is the emotion itself, but I call it emotion, that goes hand in hand with familiarization. Because remember, if emotions is gonna be in your season, you emotionally want to listen and sense how you feel, but you don't accept that, then you would not be familiar in your seasons, right? And that familiarization walks hand in hand with your emotional connection. Familiarization is that you emotionally can sense within yourself. But what you sense, you tell yourself that I get familiar with this feeling. Sometimes that emotional feeling reminds you often that you have sensed this before, that you know what this feeling means. And other times it is a different experience. Other times it is a different feeling. But familiarization is that when the emotional connection is there, the color that you add to that would nurture your relationship. The color that you add to that would be, how do you get familiar with that? That is your emotion. That is how you sense within yourself. How is your attitude with that? Are you disregarding that? And that's just that becomes the color that you can nurture it, or the color that many relationship partners disregard. They shift off. They don't want to have nothing to do with the feeling. They try and ignore it, and they try and educate themselves that maybe someone else, maybe that's for someone else. or maybe someone else might find themselves fine in that that emotional connection. Maybe you would be emotionally connecting different to someone else, but the color that you add then with what you get familiar with is that nurtures the relationship itself. So when you and your relationship partner connect and you are familiar with how the person feels, you would exactly know when the person is upset, yes, when the person is disappointed, when the person wants to communicate with you. And that familiarization is that nurturing color that then brings fruit to that is the relationship, and adds fruit to that is the relationship in completeness. And therefore, with familiarization, we educate ourselves that emotional connection, you nurture it, you take care of it, you listen to it, right? You listen to it, you apply what is required to it, you react on that. The same thing that you would get to be familiar with a newborn baby. The newborn baby requires you to react on that. That is the parentingness of the newborn baby, and that parentingness is that exact familiarization that you add to your relationship. Yes, you treat your relationship as a baby itself, and both parties in the relationship would learn to be so protective because they would learn to treat one another like babies itself in the room. When you learn to listen like a baby, you learn to respond like a baby. You learn to respond like you would respond to a baby. You learn to listen to how you would listen to a baby, right? All of those that adds, that protects, that brings that environment of family, right? That brings that familiarization, that because when marriage partners get married, it is easy for marriage partners to really lose sight on one another, to really lose one another in the relationship, right? Because the familiness of where you are birthed from, your household family, has been that familiarization route, that journey that you have been in your life, right? And when you get to a relationship and you don't educate yourself to be in that you call house itself, that you call family itself, that you make your partner family, that you educate yourself to get familiar in that you educate yourself to not disregard yourself with being in the family and now wanting to still be in your own household. You rather educate yourself that your marriage has become exactly that requires you to be now acting like the baby that are being nurtured in the room, the baby that are nurturing, the baby that the parent nurtures in the room, but then you also be the parent that nurtures that baby in the room. It is that you cannot disregard that familiarization requirement in your marriage, in your relationship, in where you find yourself at, in every part of our journey in life. Familiarization is that brings our generation once again back to that is family. It is an education that is never gonna end. It is an education that is never going to be exhausted. It is an ongoing education, and it becomes naturally your reaction on how you would then allow yourself to get familiar with every season that your life brings, that your journey and that your journey and that your life journey brings forth. It is that every reaction, that every nurturing requirement, that you educate yourself, that you do not disregard. And that is one of the most important factors of emotions being birthed. Familiarization in that, the color that you add to that, and the nurturing then becomes that brings fruits, right? That when you look at a vineyard, who loves a vineyard? We all do love that. That's one of the most romantic places to be at in any relationship. And you cannot tell me that you are in a relationship and you have never been on a wine tour with your partner, right? It is that one of those romantic journeys, especially for people who are married for years. That's one of your nature has given us all of these amazingnesses, and sometimes we want to only do what we want to do. But there's that nurturing in the relationship. That's really the vineyard itself. That's really that experience when you go on a wine tour with your partner. That experience when you go and sit in the vineyard and you have a picnic there. That is the exact fruit of the relationship, in the quietness of it, you and your relationship partner are being educated, and it is something that you do not disregard. But when you truly want to emotionally connect with the person, sometimes people are a bit selfish and people don't want to connect really with one another, but they want to be with one another in the relationship. And many guys know that that is one of your most romantic experiences, is to go on that is that romantic wine tour, that you go to a winery, that you go and sit in the vineyard, that you go and have a picnic there, that you just have that is gonna be that speaks to you in your relationship. And the only reason why you would want to go on an amazing wine tour is because of the voice of the relationship, because that wine tour is the exact voice of your relationship, right? And when you experience that in your day in a relationship and you take that journey, the education is exactly that, right? When you allow yourself and you go on such an experience and you allow yourself to be in that is the experience itself in the relationship, and then the voice of that you walks with you after that in your relationship is the current voice that remains in your relationship, and is that familiarization that is nurturing and that will continue to nurture your relationships. It's one of the most amazing experiences, but it's not something that you just do because you want to do it. You need to be current when you do it, right? You don't need to have to do it because you just now want to have someone feel fine with where they're at. You need to be current on the experience itself, familiar with what the experience means to you, rather than having someone there and having now to treat this person, just be there in the currentness of the room. It's one of the most amazing relationship journeys that you can start and that you can have in your relationship, is when you go on that wine tour and you allow yourself to be in the currentness of that voice of your relationship. The wine tour Rabia calls, it's nurturing, yes, but it's the voice of that becomes your relationship journey. It's a very amazing experience. I have not done it with anyone, but I know the education of it. The education of you yourself has gotten familiar with you. So Rabia knows what would be fine for Rabia, Elise, but it is one of the most amazing experiences that any relationship couple can do for themselves. It's very amazing. Yes, I call it the voice of the relationship, the wine tour. The wine tour is the voice of the relationship. But the voice becomes that is owned to you, right? The voice is that, yeah, you own it, you own it, you own your relationship. You don't want to go and get distracted with someone else, you own it, right? You allow yourself to be current in it. You allow yourself to understand the nurturing of that voice, right? When you get familiar with someone, right? When a baby is born, you get familiar with the baby and the voice of the baby, and the baby gets familiar with the voice of the parent when the baby hears the voice in the womb, right? That the voice of that is that wine tour, that wine experience, the vineyard, the grapes, the amazingness, the different colors, the different types of wines, the different types of grapes that you get, right? The different seasons, how it's nurtured, how it's really protected in its season, how it can sometimes go where people used to, to tram the grapes with their feet, to produce that exact the taste of it, the taste of the relationship, yes, where the taste of the relationship are being birthed. It is that is the voice, that is the education, but the taste of it becomes that when you take in your relationship, when you take in what the relationship brings, right, the challenges that comes along with it, then you allow yourself to accept where you are at in your relationship and the education in your relationship. So the voice then becomes the acceptance, and you cannot do in any relationship without the acceptance of it, right? The acceptance of accepting you, accepting your partner, accepting your relationship is not going to be the relationship that you had with someone else previously, but it's now going to be that is a different environment itself, right? A different season itself, because all of us walks in different seasons. We have allowed ourselves and have been educated in different households, right? And for the household to become one again, because we were so used to being in our parents' house, and now we are building our own house, and we need to now grow family and allow us to be family in our own house. we allow that there is acceptance, that there is the voice, there is the birthness, there is the baby that becomes our every reaction to one another, that becomes the every love, the every kindness, the every care, that every attitude that we would have to one another. And then it becomes a fostering place for everyone, where people sense that people want to be there, people want to do that, people want to experience it, because that is now not something that you pretend to have. And many people have educated themselves. Let me educate relationship. Let me take people on a relationship journey, and then they go to restaurants and they pretend, right? And in the meantime, they are not in the currentness that they call home itself, because they've gotten so adapted to their own family lives. And relationship requires you to make it home itself, not by pretentiousness, but by the currentness of you in your relationship, right? The currentness of your every acceptance of where you are at and of what you educate, rather than that you have been educated years ago, you apply that, but the something new is that brightens the color, that when the sun comes up the next day, Rabia's excited, and Rabia say, yo, another something new. But yesterday had so many things in it, but today requires me to not only focus on all the things that were in yesterday, but to allow myself that I listen to what it today brings forth. What is that something new in my today? And many times we educate that and we don't familiarize ourselves with it and we don't own it, but we are part of it. But what we learn in our season is to allow yourself to learn that what is my something new in today. And that is when your relationship house becomes a home, right? Becomes a fostering place, becomes that when families, those years were families, these years relationship partners learns to also be family. And that is something that we do not disregard, we do not throw it out, we do not humiliate and abuse it away. If you really are happy with where you are at, then nurture exactly that. Don't nurture to impress people, no. Don't nurture to have people in your room the whole time, no. But nurture to embrace that there is the completeness of the color, the brightness in your relationship, there's something new in your relationship, and allow yourself that experience. You would honestly feel at home with where you are at in your relationship, and you would honestly not require anyone else to approve where you are at in your relationship. It's very important. It's an amazing experience, but we need to allow ourselves that in life, really. Another thing that we want to focus on is the nurturing, yes, of that. That is then when you own that nurturingness in the relationship, it becomes your exact emotional connection with one another. When you become to own that nurturing environment in your relationship and in your household, it exactly becomes the emotional connection that you have with your partner. You nurtured it, you've gotten familiar with the color of it, the different emotions in season, the voice of it, the parenting requirement, how it gives birth in season, and how every day it gives birth to something new. But that exact emotional connection that you connect with, that you allow within yourself, that someone else senses and they're happy with where they're at in the relationship with you, and they accept exactly that emotional connection then is that you own within your relationship. And when you own it, you allow yourself to accept the relationship the way that it is, the journey that it has been educating you that this is not how the relationship is going to be. You own that, and you allow it. You allow yourself to be in that environment that you have been educated. If you are fine with it, if you feel protected, if you feel that it has been nurtured and both parties are fine, and you can sense the emotions concerning the relationship and the exact emotion, then when you allow yourself that is accepting your relationship. And that is when your journey of your relationship would have all the differences in it, but you and your partner would be that family that you are always familiar with, that used to be your household family, and then it now is your family with your partner, with your wife, with your husband. And in that season of acceptance, that becomes that is the fruit, the grape in the vineyard. It becomes exactly that fruit. You allow it, you accept that nurturingness, you accept that emotional connection that is there in the room. You don't shift it off, you don't disregard it, you don't not want to be part of it. If you are happy, if you are protected in it, if you are respected in it, if you are not humiliated in it, if you are in that education that someone else accepts, that we educate, that this is going to be an education room also many times, and then you allow the journey, and then allowing, and that you allowing it, your partner allows it, becomes acceptance, and acceptance is the fruit that then produces in your relationship, and it never fades. In the days that the seasons changes, the fruit continues to produce new fruit, and the something new is familiar every day, and you don't disregard the something new. The sun shines in that relationship every season, and you allow it, and you allow yourself. The springtime is there, every season is there, you blossom it. When the blossomingness appears, Mama Anna used to have blossomingness when we were little, and I was not even born those years, because remember, when I was born, our family already moved away from Mama Anna's blossoming season, and where Mama Anna used to live in a house that was now not upstairs or in a flat, but then the family was those years, they used to call themselves family. They say, Yorubia, you were not born, but you would really have, enjoyed that experience. And they used to tell us about that, because then Mama Anna and Papa Yapi used to be nurturing them. They said that on a Saturday when Mama Anna was off, it was family for the whole community, Papa Yapi had his days, he had his drinking beer, and there were all the amazingnesses of it, but the garden was full of flowers. Mama Anna always used to love gardening. My Mama Anna always used to love to nurture, right? That nurturing. And when my Mama Anna used to educate, I can remember when women came for marriage education by my Mama Anna would always educate them to nurture, to not disregard that nurturingness. I don't know why I am so harsh on it sometimes with my husband, but my Mama Anna, the boys used to tell me, my brothers used to say, our Mama had that nurturingness. The garden was full of flowers, different colors of flowers. They had a big garden those years, and they were living on a farm in Paul community. And that nurturing environment, that open houses, that familyness, that education has always been in the room. So when I was born in the flat, and I couldn't now remember how well dressed up these guys used to be, and they used to have their suits on a Sunday, and that family life, that the father works for the household, and the household never goes faded, because the mama is parenting, and the mama is nurturing, and the mama is taken care of, until my father got ill, and then we lost my father, and I was born during those years after my father was ill. A year after my father, my father was a year with us when I was still alive, a little girl. And during those years when I was born, I couldn't remember any of it, because my mama then had to work for us when I was born. And they were very disappointed, because for them that was family. And when they lost my papa, they were so disappointed that they all went different routes, and some of them never returned back from that mindset of what they had, and when papa was there. And for me, sometimes that they still educate us without saying it with words, but they require me to be the Rabia that abides to that education, because being born from that womb, you might not have been there, but you would be that exact resemblance of your mama in your season. And therefore, even though our generation during this season looks like we are going through so much challenges, and there's so much happening in our generation, we have that requirement that we do not disregard, that we are birthed from the womb of exactly that nurturing, that even though today it looks like there's lots of arguments happening in our generation, but what my brothers educates us is that the arguments are there, but you are there current in the room. You allow yourself to remain to that education, that is that nurturing requirement, that when our generation are challenged, we do not tell ourselves that we do not have that was there years ago, or we were not there when people used to be fighting find for 100 years on earth, for 130 years on earth, but we tell us we are born in their exact environment, from their exact womb, and we cannot not be part of a generation that will be there for 100 years, for 130 years. We educate ourselves that, we get familiar with that environment, we don't go and deprive one another from where they're required to be at, but we learn that the journey of life trains us sometimes in an instance, but that requirement, that education never fades away, because it might seem to us that we were not there in person to have seen the fruits of where everything started in our generation, but we're required to abide to that familiarization, that emotional connection, that when we sense that when we appreciate our seasons, we appreciate it with accepting, but we appreciate it with nurturing that brings fruit in our different seasons. That is where we are at with our generation in our season. And what our discussions, that is that someone says, Rabia, but we are all family and everyone is in relationship with everyone. And Rabia says, yes, you do not sound wrong, because when we look around us, we are only there and there's children being born, and now everyone wants everyone's partner. But remember, if everyone's gonna now just want to grab someone's partner, then we're gonna want to argue like this the whole time through. Everyone accept the season that they're in, they wait their place, and if they feel that there's someone for them that they want to be introduced to, then do it in a way that is gonna be protective and respectful to the next person. Don't just now go and grab the next person because you have now all learned and you all educate one another that you're all family and you all just want to grab, and this one will just want to have that one, and this one that just want to have that one. We understand that we are emotionally so connected, but that nurturingness is important, everyone. We might everyone be emotionally loving one another and connecting with one another, and we are now being introduced to one another on social media, and this one falls in love with that one, this one experiences that one, but remember, if we are all now gonna just do what we want to do, then where's the parenting in the room? Where's the protective environment in our generation? Where's the familyness in the room? Where's that is acceptance, that brings the fruit, that is prosperity for everyone, and not only for certain people, not only for people that want to educate you that the relationship is blossoming, and in the meantime they're humiliating and abusive to other people. It is that you accept, but that you nurture with kindness, you nurture with care, you nurture with protectiveness. You don't just nurture your own household, no. Because remember, when you move out of your household, you are introduced to a new family, you marry into that family, and that family becomes a household. So what is a household then now to our generations? We have been familiar that our parents used to be the room, the house, the education was there. And now we are being introduced to an international generation that requires that same family environment. So yes, we all just want to do what we do. But remember, let us not abuse one another, because when we educate one another to abuse one another, our generation becomes abusive, it becomes owing to us, and it's gonna take time for us to get rid of those abusive ways, right? So we rather allow ourselves to educate, right? To be fine with where we are at, to do what we want to do, with respect to the other. And if someone else doesn't have respect for you, then step away from the environment. Remember how we used to do when we were little. If an environment doesn't feel well, you look at it, you get familiar with it, and you step away from that. That might not feel fine with you in any day or any season. It is that we are not gonna now want to be arrogant with where we are at, but we are going to allow that makes us one family again, that says that, you know what, this Black Rabia with this short hair, with not having blonde hair, with a dimple on her legs, with her knees looking so funny many days, all of that, some people are just embracing and loving, and other people are saying, how can you love this one? Her hair is not that is not that is not that. Acceptance is acceptance in our generation. And sometimes, yes, even the blonde Baywatch woman, we appreciate one another as family, but see sometimes even feel, that someone else looks prettier than me, and then the other person is honestly pretty. But we have taught ourselves that pretty is not pretty, gorgeous is not gorgeous, amazing looking is not amazing looking, that acceptance in our generation. We understand and we accept where we are at. And when we have that, we would have a good laugh at all the things that has happened in our generation, but all the reasons why we shouldn't be jealous and hating on one another, but in acceptance and complete acceptance of the differences of everyone is going to be emotional, everyone is going to be connecting with everyone in a different way, and they're just going to love it because such is this universe. We just love it. We just embrace it. We just nurture with it. We just parent with it. We just are being parented by it, and we are protect one another in all of that, and we do not abuse it, and we do not abuse one another. It's one of the most amazing experiences that anyone can have. In saying that, that is gonna be it for us for today with our relationship discussion this month, and we are gonna continue with our discussions yes next month, and also our people of color discussion yes, and also our people of color discussion. We're gonna have relationship discussion next month. Yes, we're gonna focus on. We want to next month do probably such a woman of color. Yes, such a woman of color is an education of what I went through on my journey and what has allowed me to have accepted that is me in my season, and the education of such a woman of color. Yes, it's based on my history and my sister, and being born from the womb of our mama Anna Martha. Yes, who really has lost her Mama Martha has lost her mother in a way that we just heard the story of it, but it was abusive. And Mama Martha's mother's head, yes, was beheaded in front of Mama Martha, and Mama Martha had to be the mature woman who would be parenting her own daughters and sons. Yeah, and Mama Anna then has become that was really a mama for community woman, that I was sitting in the education of when my mama used to educate women in our household, and when women used to come to knock on the door for Mama Anna to parent them in their marriages. And I was young, I was very young, but I never missed a discussion in that room, and I never missed the education and the tears that I saw of the things that women go through in marriages has really allowed me to be a bit stronger. I'm not very lenient with my husband, and I can say that honestly, that is something that I still have to learn, because I just want to argue my own arguments. But what I've learned in my Mama Anna's education room that she had with the woman, those tears and the times that she had to go and discuss it with the men also, and that she didn't allow herself to abuse men in those discussions, but she waited. Women would say, Mama, come and speak to my husband now. And Mama Anna said, no, for me to go and speak to your husband at this moment would not be fine. And it would seem humiliating, because remember, I'm a mama, but I'm not his mama. You notice me as a mama in the community, but I'm not your husband's mama, and your husband is different. So just give it some time. Eddie, I will come and speak to your husband when the time is right. Be fine with it. And then Mama Anna didn't wait long to go and speak to men, and men didn't feel humiliated by that. They felt that the Mama Anna parenting was a parenting that is required, and they really appreciated that. Married couples really appreciated that. And I have learned it, and I've really embraced it, and I have sat in, I saw the tears, I saw the different things that people go through in relationships, and I've learned that we are going to be different sometimes, but we're gonna have to allow ourselves to nurture that is that protective environment, that we don't abuse one another, and that we learn that when we can educate properly, when you can go and speak to someone when you feel challenged in your relationship, have it be someone that would not abuse your husband in the discussion, that would not want to now go and talk to the next people about your husband when you talk to them about maybe your marriage challenges. That protective environment is important for marriages, yes, for women to feel fine with not maybe wanting to feel that they are being humiliated, and then they don't sometimes understand what the husband means or requires of them. It is that education that men often don't speak about a lot. They won't say why they are reacting in that way. And sometimes if you allow yourself, and there's really those Mama Anna parenting in our communities, let us allow ourselves to be part of the Mama Anna parenting rooms in our communities, and to rather want to discuss a matter when someone else tells you that this person's relationship is challenging, and then you don't go and share it with the next community member. be the Mama Anna in that, the mama, their parents, that she did everything that she can. And even though the brother, one of my brothers was even on drugs, yes, because they felt disappointed when they lost my papa. And the other brother, Martin, he even uses drugs, yes. Why? Because he had to leave school at a time that he was in his career. He was, yes, a very good athlete, yes, at Sonop School, those years in South Africa. And Brother Martin was in his final year of primary school. He just started secondary school, and he had to leave school because Papa passed, and then he had to go and work for the family. And then when he was 21 years old, he had a train. They threw him out of the train, and he got disabled, right? But he can still walk. The doctors thought he was not gonna walk and he was not gonna be alive, but he made it. And today he's 54 years old. He smokes his drugs when he wants to, and he goes through his day the way that he wants to. But sometimes that disappointment, that when we don't educate ourselves properly, when we don't allow ourselves to listen to how the seasons can change us often, then sometimes we want to feel abused by it. But Brother Martin did not feel abused by his situation. No, his career was at his highest. He had the most successful friends those years. But it is that he did not feel disappointed by it. And today, 30 years later, he walks, he's 55 this year, and he's amazingly appreciating even that season that became part of his every season. That when this universe took our household, in our household went separate ways, and everything that happened to our household happened, we did not give up on our household. And what I've mentioned in my house a few days ago is that I've learned to not doubt our household family. You know, I've learned that we can sometimes be born and be educated from different parts of the universe. And when you are born from one mama's womb, you sometimes have lots of differences. But the one thing that with such a woman of color that I want to discuss is that my mama was such a woman of color, and we have learned to not doubt our brothers, that when our brothers made different choices, when they could not speak of how humiliated it has been for them to not have had their papa there, because they are men in the house and they could never say it with words. But we have learned that has happened. We have learned to not doubt our family, to not doubt one another, that even though we might have disagreements, even though sometimes someone would feel, but this one would do and this one can do, then we learn to not doubt the other's reaction, but we learn to be that is family in what we can do, because the education never fades. People learn from you on a daily basis, and it is your exact attitude and your exact reaction where we are at in our seasons, and with how you react when seasons changes in your life. And that is what we have to say for our discussion today. Thank you for tuning. Yes, listen to the video again, and listen to, sometimes I speak very fast because I sometimes am very aggressed with circumstances in our generation. And then when I have my discussions, I would speak in a fast-paced mode because of my aggressiveness that I can sense within myself. That is sometimes so painful, and that you sometimes don't know how to release when it's not so difficult for our generation to be in that there is family, there is one family, and that we do not have to abuse one another in such a way. And when I speak so aggressive, I want you to not disregard my discussions, but to make time to listen to, even though you play the recording, and to listen to the education word for word. It is that education that nurtures and that really educates thoroughly, that sometimes we say it in a way that we sometimes don't know how to say, but the environment around us is sometimes so that you just want to say what you want to say because you want to have someone else be fine out there, right? And then you say it in a way that you feel protected at, and that you want someone else to really be firm with where they're at and to be protective with where they're at. And then I exactly say it in that way. Yeah, so that is where we are at in our season. And that is what we want, us to not disregard one another's education in season for our nation, our countries, yes, and that has become the international nation of our generation. And that is it for Rabia Elise of Vogue Business today. And if you just want to have me mentor you through any discussions, you are free to really discuss it with me. I really have had my experience in life, and I therefore am free to give advice, am free to really, my pal community really know when Rabia Elise is there there's really people that listens to that, that is not the person that you're now going to see the professional education there of maybe a mentor education or whatever legislative requirements there might be these years for people to really just have other people also educate other people that this is my journey and this is how I felt fine. Maybe this would be a support and assistance in what you maybe are being challenged with in your season. And sometimes even in our season, they ask education for all of these motivations. But when we learn and when we learn to from one another, we learn that life's journey is that, and people are going to be different. People are going to have had to go through different things. And therefore, when you can be fine, contact people that can sometimes be there for you and that you have learned that is in that protectiveness, that they would not disrespect you or they would not abuse your discussion with them, but it would be that is the protective environment that everyone wants to be at in this season. And that is it for our discussion today. And with the challenges that we had, let us learn to be the woman, be such woman of color, the men to be that parent, the man in the house, that you know what, when the woman wants to be there, she wants to feel protected, and the man says, but I'm not only your protector. And then they have to learn that both of them, the protectiveness that they want for themselves, they nurture in that. That is the relationship itself, that protective season. And that is finally it for today. Have an amazing day further.